Arab affairs. As usual, we are tackling an Arab affair. Today, we are speaking about a collective Arab affair, which is Egypt's the presidency or the chairmanship of the UN Security Council. That is for 1 month. And of course, during this period, many conferences, many meetings, sidelines meetings, and official meetings will be held, and Egypt will be chairing those ones. Already, Egypt has chaired the Nation Security Council session talking about terrorism, where it submitted some of its initiatives. Other initiatives and other meetings will be held. What is important is that throughout this month, Egypt will be chairing the UN Security Council, submitting all the important Arab and African causes to be the head of discussions. Also, a huge responsibility that Egypt is really shouldering is that the situation on the ground in the Arab territories and in Africa would really be portrayed in the right means in the UN Security Council. We will be, of course, discussing this and more during our episode. Before we start on, let's have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for discussion.
The Red Cross said an aid convoy was refused entry to Syria's Daraya, dashing hopes for the first such delivery since regime forces began a siege of the rebel hill town in 2012. In the Damascus region, the convoy was refused. A truck convoy organized by the ICRC, the United Nations, and the Syrian Arab Red Crescent had been due to deliver baby milk. UN envoy and the resident humanitarian coordinator had decided to abort the mission to Daraya. Lebanese group Hezbollah has announced that its top military commander had been killed in an attack in Syria. The group said it was still investigating the cause of the blast near Damascus airport. The death of Mustafa Badreddin, Hezbollah's massive intervention in Syria in support of President Bashar al-Assad regime, came as a fragile truce in the country's 5-year conflict. 6-day-old ceasefire in battleground second city Aleppo expired early on Thursday without renewal. Heavy airstrikes pounded Al-Qaeda's Syrian affiliate al-Nusra Front in its Aleppo province stronghold in the northwest, killing 16 of its fighters. In another sign of the divisions in the North African country, rival Libyan forces are preparing offensives against the Daesh terrorist group as the militants gain new territory. The UN-backed unity government based in has announced the formation of a new military command to take charge of the battle against Daesh. It has urged military forces to unite and not to launch any unilateral offensive on Sirte. But in the east, the so-called Libyan army forces under the command of General Khalifa Haftar are also preparing for battle. A spokesman for Haftar said military plans have been drawn up to liberate Sirte. Thousands of Arab Israeli protesters marched in favor of a right of return of millions of Palestinians. The Arab Israelis were seen carrying Palestinian flags and others holding up signs demanding the right to return for refugees at the rally in the desert. Organizers said it was the first time such a demonstration has been held. For Palestinians, however, the events of 1948 are seen as a Nakba, as more than 760,000 Palestinians, estimated today to number about 5.5 million, or their descendants fled or were driven from their homes.
Right, welcome back. And Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry had met on Friday with the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington. That is, of course, on the sidelines of the meetings of the UN Security Council. Foreign Ministry spokesman Councillor Ahmed Abu Zaid said that they extended or rather the extended meeting tackled enhanced bilateral ties in addition to a number of regional and international issues of mutual concern. That is, of course, concerning regional and international issues, but particularly the situation or the developments in Syria and in Libya. The meeting, of course, comes ahead of a gathering by the contact group supporting Syria in Geneva on May 17th. And we all know that Egypt is already heading the UN Security Council this month. Let's watch the report and we'll come back for discussion.
Shokri wrapped up his visit to the United States on Thursday, during which he chaired a United Nations Security Council session tackling how to combat terrorism and ideology of extremist thinking. In his remarks to the Egyptian television, Shokri underscored that Egypt is adopting a number of initiatives aimed at fighting terrorism. The top diplomat asserted that Cairo puts the Palestinian cause as its priority. Egyptian took over the presidency of UN Security Council in May. On Tuesday, the foreign minister chaired a United Nations Security Council ministerial session tackling the ideology of terrorist organizations. The meeting is held upon an Egyptian initiative as it takes over the presidency of the current UN Security Council session. This comes on the second day of his visit to New York, where he is taking part in the UN Security Council and General Assembly sessions. Islamic Researchers Complex said that crimes committed by terrorism lead to its misjudgment of Islam. He went on to say that Al-Azhar worked to clarify the moderate image of Islam internationally. Meanwhile, Shokri asserted that combating terrorism is our duty, adding that regional powers benefit from terrorism organization to serve its evil interests. Shokri noted that terrorism organizations spread its extremist ideas via social media, stressing that we have to combat them by the same means. Earlier, the minister addressed the UN Peace and Security meeting, stressing that a real change may come in UN's dealing with international disputes. Shokri noted that Egypt presented a regional view to push forward the peace process. During his current visit, Shokri held a number of meetings with foreign ministers as well as senior UN officials. After the meeting, head of the UN General Assembly said that Egypt will play a major role in the upcoming period to help in setting crisis in the Middle East, especially the Syrian crisis.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV. For ads on Nile TV, Egyptian Radio and Television Union, the economic sector, info@nileinternational.net, or call us on the following numbers. Have you got a good story? Get in touch with Nile TV. Send us your videos, pictures, and stories. Email us on our website. Contact us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. And also Google+. Be part of making the news. Only on Nile TV International.
Our dear viewers, you can watch Nile TV International on the following frequencies. On the American satellite Galaxy 19 with an orbital orientation of 97 degrees to the west and a frequency of 12.028 GHz. You can also watch Nile TV in the Middle East and the Arab world on the Egyptian satellite Nilesat 201 with an orbital orientation of 7 degrees to the west and a frequency of 11.766 GHz. You can watch Nile TV International in the international satellite Intelsat 905 with the orbital orientation of 24.5 degrees to the west and a frequency of 3.688 GHz. You can watch Egyptian satellite Nilesat 102 with an orbital orientation of 7 degrees to the west and a frequency of 12.054 GHz.
Nile TV International, straight away to all the breaking news events across the world.
We're the most constant news service of the world. We make all the difference.
The entire world is shifting towards social media. That's why we're following you and we're capturing the latest.
We provide you with minute-by-minute updates of the latest events happening around the world.
Reading beyond the news.
Catching the news and following the latest and the most significant events.
You're still beyond the majors. It will be just a different sport.
News updates minute by minute.
Where we have been, where we stand now, and where we want to be in the future.
Whatever is making the headlines, will bring you the story.
In the beginning there was the sun, and the sun gazed upon a land, and chose it from among the others. And the land grew and became an empire, destined to be the cradle of civilization, and known as the mother of the world. A land of legend and mystery. Story to tell. A world to live. Gift of the Nile. Guardian of the past. Capturing the hearts of people all over the world. Get inspired to start your own story, where it all begins.
Right, welcome back, and let me first welcome our guest, Ambassador Mohammed Shazli, former Assistant Foreign Minister. We thank you very much for being with us.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, from the very beginning of this month, Egypt assumed its responsibility as the chairman of the UN Security Council for this month. And many are putting high hopes during this month for issues to be raised. The Arab League has already said that it will be holding an urgent meeting in order to see how it can really cooperate with Egypt during this period. How do you view such a meeting? What should really be prepared for Egypt in order to be able to really raise the causes in a very accurate way?
First of all, let us not have expectations that exceed the capabilities of one single country.
Definitely.
The problem is a pan-Arab problem. And if the Arabs do not join ranks and join forces, I think the future is going to be very bleak. We've had some very disturbing phenomena lately. The ceasefire in Syria was announced by the United States and Russia. As if you know, this is a bilateral affair between the Russians and the Americans, and as if the Arabs are completely out of the equation.
Ambassador Mohammed, I think we all know that this is an international war on the lands of Syria. It is
an international war, but we are the Arabs are part of the international community, and what is happening on Arab territory. I don't mince words. You know, I don't want to speak rosy language in a very ugly situation. We've had another very serious phenomena. Israel declaring that it will not leave the Golan.
Yes.
And why is this? This is because, you know, when the Golan was occupied territory, Syrian territory, it was logical that this occupation has to end and this land has to return to Syria. Now the whole agenda is agenda of partition. The Kurds are claiming territory. The Turks are claiming territory for the Turkmens. The Iranians are speaking of a Shiite state. The Russians are speaking of a central state for the regime. And it is only logical that the Israelis would say, I want my part of the cake too. Because in the whole agenda now, everybody is speaking of a partition. We have to also question the integrity of the opposing parties. We have, you know, a comical situation.
I just want to understand by the integrity of the opposing parties here.
You have to have serious negotiators. We can't, you know, have a negotiation when yesterday I think Bashar al-Ja'fari says, I'm not going to sit with Alwash. He is a terrorist, he is killing innocent people, and then the other side is saying that the regime is killing innocent people. The whole idea of negotiation is to stop of innocent people. Nobody is free of blame. Everybody concerned is to blame.
Ambassador Mohammed, let me here ask you. They first have to identify who are the civilians, because everyone is considered on the Syrian lands as a terrorist or a part of a certain party group. I mean, opposition, because really I don't understand who is the moderate and who is the civilian and what's going on in Syria.
You don't understand, I don't understand, the Americans don't understand, the Russians don't understand. There are factions that the Russians want to call terrorists and the Americans don't want to call them terrorists.
Let's say
and vice versa.
Let's say stop the killing at large in Syria.
Indeed, this is the first step. You know, the problem in Syria is that nobody is fighting against terrorism. Everybody there is fighting for their own agenda. If we are really fighting against terrorists, terrorist acts are clear. Whatever your political agenda is, you don't kill children, you don't bomb hospitals, you don't kill non-combatants. This is terrorism, and this is what we have to concentrate upon. But if somebody is fighting for my agenda and commits atrocities and I turn a blind eye, this is a recipe for catastrophe. And this is what is happening, a catastrophe.
And this is a meeting, or what went through a meeting between Sameh Shoukry, the Minister, and the U.S. Secretary of State Kerry in Washington just yesterday, when they spoke, or part of their extended meeting was on Syria. Now, Egypt is one of the countries, or the important or cornerstone countries, or at least the one that is, thank God, on its standing on its legs, and it is presiding over the UN Security Council, and hence it is a good opportunity for Egypt to submit the Arab causes in the right place. Unfortunately, sir, yes, it is an Arab cause. However, legally speaking, is the world body concerned with international conflicts and whatsoever. The Arab League hasn't got this capability. We as Arabs do not have sufficient, if I can put it in this frame, means to be able to control the whole situation in all countries. So, turning back to what we were speaking about, in Egypt assuming the presidency of the UN Security Council, it should be presenting the Arab causes in the meaningful way. How do you expect Egypt to submit, particularly of what concerns Syria, because it is a chaotic scene, and it is a real dramatic and tragic scene. Libya, because it is a threat not just on the Middle East but on Africa and rather the whole world. It already put some initiatives on terrorism, but let's take step by step, please.
First of all, to understand the magnitude of the catastrophe. Just before started, you had a presentation talking about the Nakba nearly 70 years ago, where 70,000 Palestinians were misplaced at the time.
Yes.
We are talking now of millions. Over 1 million in Syria, over 1 million in Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Sudan. So this is, you are telling me how can Egypt present the Arab case?
At least catastrophes. Catastrophes.
The problem is that there is no Arab case. The Arabs are not united over the case in Syria. Look at the stance of Iraq. Look at the stance of Saudi Arabia. Look at the stance of Egypt. They are not the same.
No.
So this is, as I was telling you, in Syria and in Iraq and in Libya and in there are gigantic forces playing there. You have the United States, you have Russia, you have Israel, you have Turkey. Egypt cannot face these powers alone. Egypt can face these powers in a united Arab front. So the first step is to try to unify the Arab position to Arab cause, so that you can present it. This is, I think, speaking to the Americans, speaking to the Russians, speaking to whoever, is an important thing, because diplomacy is about speaking to the other party. And this is part of the Syrian tragedy, that the people concerned do not want to speak to one another. Now Al-Ja'fari is saying, I will not except after he shaves his beard. This is, what kind of logic is this? This reminds me of during the, I think the Madrid meetings over Palestine, somebody of the Israeli delegation said, I will not speak to Saad Arakat except if he removes his kufiyya. I mean, you can't deal, we have to put in mind that there are thousands of people dying every day. There are hundreds of thousands of children that are being orphaned. There are schools that are being destroyed. There are hospitals that are being destroyed. This is the future of the country.
On the diplomatic front, what are your expectations for the agenda of Egypt while assuming its responsibility of Security Council?
First of all, I mean, we have to concentrate very strongly on the unity of Syria. That it is not admissible for anybody to speak about the partition of Syria. Syria is a state, a member of the United Nations, and a member of the Arab League, and we have to preserve the unity of its territory and its sovereignty. We have to also concentrate on the humanitarian tragedy that is going on, to stop the bloodshed. We have to also try to unify the opposition. You cannot, the other day it was said that over 100 factions were asking to attend the meetings in Geneva. I mean, this is, ludicrous. You can't have 100 factions who are fighting supposedly against dictatorship and against tyranny and against... Well, unite your front. I mean, the only united front in Syria today is the regime.
Yes, that is concerning Syria. What about other items that should be on the head of what Egypt will be submitting? Of course,
the whole situation in the Middle East. We have a tragedy going on in Libya. We have a tragedy that has been going on for decades now in Iraq and Yemen. We have to stop the bloodshed, stop the destruction of Arab nations, stop the partitioning of the Arab world. Several years ago, there was a term that has been introduced to the political and to the media world, and that is MENA, Middle East and North Africa. They stopped calling it the Arab world. It has become the Middle East and North Africa. If it is not an Arab world any longer, therefore it will be legitimate for factions to fight for their piece of the cake in this large entity. You have now the Kurds that they want their state, you want the Turkmens, the Shiites, and so on. If we return to the term, the Arab world, this is the house of everybody living on this land, whether they are Muslims, whether they are Christians, whether they are Kurds, whether they are Amazighs, whether they are, they have lived together for centuries and built a civilization and built a culture, and they deserve to be part of this world. But now when we speak about Middle East and North Africa, it's a different story.
When we are speaking about that, it's not we as Arabs who are really putting such a division or such a vision towards the situation on the ground. I mean, here, no Arab would real Arab would really want to say, yes, I'm a Kurd, so I want to be away from the Iraqis, or I'm a Turkmen, so I really don't want to be part of the Arab world anymore, or I am, in fact, there are certain powers who are instigating such ambitions in to some population here or there, or some parties here or there in this area, and this suddenly fueled the whole situation. From your point of view, how can this be addressed?
This can be addressed exactly as I said, to consider the Arab world as the home of everybody who has lived there for generations, who has fought for this land, who has built this culture, who has built these civilizations. Salah ad-Din was a Kurd.
Yes, he was.
Tariq ibn Ziyad was a Berber.
Yes.
We cannot claim what is happening is not being instigated by external powers. Maybe it's being used by external powers. But we have started this. Saddam Hussein has used poison gas against the Kurds. The Sudanese have been fighting the southern Sudan for decades because of Muslims and non-Muslims. This is, we have to, we have launched the slogan of Arab nationalism, the Arabs as a nation. I think we should now start to talk about Arab patriotism, the Arabs of a patrie, a home, which is the Arab world, which extends from the ocean to the Gulf. And stop talking about the Arabs as a nation distinct from other, the Kurds, the Amazighs, the Shiites. We are a single people, whatever our genetics say, that he is a Kurd, he is a Shiite, he is the Shiites and the Sunnis are killing one another in Iraq. They stop somebody and the Shiites called Abu Bakr, they shoot him. I mean, what kind of a homeland could tolerate this? We have to remedy the grassroots of the problem, the educational system, the media system, the legal system, so that it can incorporate all the ingredients, the people who are living in this land.
Now, Egypt is okay for this month the chairman of the UN Security Council, but for the next 2 years it will be assuming the non-permanent seat in the UN, and I guess this is quite a good period for Egypt to present the causes, not just the Arab one, because I guess the Arabs and the Africans have their own causes, and they have their similarity in what they aspire for. Or let's say the Arabs need stability and the Africans need stability, but from another area, which is development and economy. So from your point of view, how will Egypt, because it is part of both regions here, if we're speaking, present the causes of the Arabs and at the same time present the causes of Africa, and how this particular membership?
Indeed, I mean, we have to also stress on Egypt speaking for Africa. If you look at the map today, the most unstable regions in the world are Africa and the Arab world. The most underdeveloped parts in the world are in Africa and in the Arab world. Corruption is rampant in Africa and in the Arab world. The health problems in Africa and in the Arab world, the educational problems, the participation in science and technology. These are, the cornerstones of building a strong and durable nation, whether in Africa or were in the Arab world. We have to address, all these problems. One of the things that I really found very positive was that a high official Al-Azhar was addressing the Security Council.
Yes, very much indeed.
I think this is a very good step in the sense that we are...
Actually, it was one of the sessions that spoke about terrorism where Egypt submitted many of the initiatives in order to tackle this phenomenon. And Al-Azhar was speaking about its role in spreading the ideology of a moderate Islam, or rather Islam real principles and values. And yes, indeed, it was quite an issue, or quite a step taken by the Egyptian diplomacy to invite the assistant or the deputy of the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar to attend such an important session speaking about terrorism. Yes, please.
Indeed, Al-Azhar is a very important card that Egypt can use in its diplomacy. I mean, there is misapprehension, misunderstanding of Islam because it has been distorted by terrorism. And this is not Islam. The mafia is mostly of Catholics coming from Sicily. Catholicism is terrorist creed. We have to portray, and all the world in the West and in the East, they respect Al-Azhar. Unfortunately, we have, some channels that are attacking Al-Azhar. And I think this is a very dangerous step. We have to fortify Al-Azhar. We have to understand the importance of Al-Azhar at this very important juncture of time.
What you've been speaking about was very much illustrated by the recent visit of Saudi Arabia King Salman, I guess the United Arab Emirates Crown Prince, and Bahraini King, along with even the French President Hollande, when they all, for the first time, met with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. And I guess that was a kind of appreciation to the role that Al-Azhar can be playing, or I don't know. How did you view this matter then?
I think this was a very positive step, and this also reflects the trust and the respect that Al-Azhar has, not only in the Islamic world, but in France, that is bleeding from terrorism. And it was hit by those who call themselves Muslims with terrorist acts. And I think a very positive sign has also appeared these days with the election of a Muslim mayor of London during this very turbulent situation. This shows that there is a reason, that there are those who understand that Daesh and Al-Qaeda are not Islam.
Definitely they are not, definitely. And if we're speaking about Egypt addressing, yes, the Arab causes, which are very much addressing also the African causes. African causes have different angles other than terrorism, because yes, definitely terrorism affect their whole situation, including their economic, but there is also economic and developmental issues. How, from your point of view, would Egypt push for such files?
The paradox we have in Africa is I think, one of the richest continents in its natural resources. You have everything you have oil, you have agriculture, you have animal husbandry, you have metals, everything you can, water power. All of this is very rich in Africa, and yet Africa is one of the poorest areas in the world concerning the welfare of its people. This is because Africa has two things that are preventing its leap forward. And that is instability, that is caused by tribalism, that is caused by racism, that is, and also corruption. We have to help Africa pursue a line that will lead to stability and will lead also to a very strong campaign against. You have the example of South Sudan. South Sudan partitioned from Sudan under the banner that the North Sudanese are racists. And then as soon as they partitioned, we have found that races between the Dinkas and the Nuers and the Shuluk has destabilized the country and put it in a turmoil that has destroyed the very few resources it has. What is happening between Egypt and Ethiopia, if it is not handled well, could lead to a very serious situation of instability in the Horn of Africa and the Nile Basin, and indeed in Africa as a whole.
Yes.
We have to, policies that foment stability rather than confrontation. We have to find a solution that presents a win-win situation, a positive sum game for everybody.
Finally here, sir, if I may ask you, now we know that Egypt, and it's our discussion, assuming the UN Security Council membership, non-permanent, of course, seat, and at the same time, you, Secretary General for the Arab League, is to take position next month. Yes, and it would be a really important step to coordinate between Egypt as a member of the UN Security Council and between the Arab League with a new Secretary General that really vowed to, or he really vowed, who really vowed to make a real difference in showing or in dealing with the Arab cases.
I wish Minister Abul Ghait the best of luck. He has a very, very difficult job.
Yes.
He is a very capable man, a career diplomat who has proven himself. I think, the challenge now is, as I said, concentrating on Arab patriotism rather than Arab nationalism. We should stop talking of the Arabs as a nation and the other entities that are living on this land are parasites, and that we look upon as potential Trojan horses. We are, by this attitude, we are throwing these people into the arms of our enemies.
Yes.
We should embrace these people, make them feel that they are part of us, that they have built this civilization with us, that we are one indivisible faction, whether an Arab Muslim, an Arab Christian, an Arab Shiite, an Arab Sunni, an Arab Berber, an Arab of African origins. I have lived on this land, and I have a right to be protected under its umbrella and be embraced by my fellow Arabs. And I hope also that the Arab League would concentrate on the non-political issues, the cultural, educational, scientific research. The whole world, now China, India, the Europeans, the Americans, the Russians, the Israelis are going to send a module to the moon in 2020. And where are the Arabs in space?
Egypt has already built this French satellite, and it's
has launched what? The French satellite.
Yes.
French satellite. I want a satellite built by Egyptians, launched by Egyptian rocket. Those who have succeeded, the Iranians and the North Koreans, I have no sympathy with the regimes. But the Iranians, had they said, I'm going to wait for somebody, a nuclear program, they would have never had a nuclear program. The North Koreans, if they waited for the French to launch their satellite, they would have never launched a satellite.
Definitely. Yes, and we are all awaiting for this and awaiting for Arabs to wake up and unite, because anyway, Basil Mohammed Shazli, former Assistant Foreign Minister, we thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, and I apologize for being very pessimistic, but I'm a realistic man.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Dear viewers, many thanks for being with us. Next Saturday would be another Arab Fest. Goodbye.